Okay, welcome to this evening's Dharma talk. So I really wrestled with what to talk about tonight. And I thought of the stories that are told of the Buddha's practice when he would often tell his loving attendants and his Sangha, I'm going to the forest to practice breath meditation. So although he was fully enlightened by then, fully awakened, and could see deeply into the human heart and all experience, it is said that from time to time, he would say that I'm going to the forest to practice breath meditation, the basic practice, what we call anapanasati, what he called anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing. Now, I know many of you here tonight, and I know many of you are very seasoned practitioners, great experienced yogis, yoginis. And I'm not sure about you, but for me right now, what I need to take comfort in is the simplicity of practice. The simplicity of the instructions of going to my bedroom and taking up this practice of mindfulness of breathing, because life has become very complicated, very fast moving, and incredibly dull at the same time. It's very complicated when things move fast, change, and incredibly tiresome. What I feel I need is the simplicity, the exquisite simplicity of what the Buddha did, which is to take up refuge in breathing. So tonight's Dharma talk is come home and rest in the breath. How simple could that be? This is like Dharma talk 101. Dharma talk for beginners. So I hope it's really fresh and new and you feel like a beginner again. That's what I wanted to do. So I sometimes think of ourselves when we're stressed, when we're filled with worry and anticipation and wondering and really caught up in that terrible angst of these times, that we're in a sort of dangerous wilderness. We're ragged, we're far from home, and we feel perhaps like we're really exposed and that we don't have a shelter. And the Buddha called these teachings that he gave of the Dharma as a refuge. He called it a refuge. He called it a place to rest your weary self, a place to be safe, a place to seek comfort. And now more than any other time in my lifetime, I feel I need such a place free from the trance of my own mind that's fraught with speculation, our minds that can be ravaged by disappointment and shock and dullness and confusion. Do you need a refuge right now? So coming to sit on your cushion tonight, sitting as you did with the simplicity and the truth of the phenomena of breathing, sitting in the stillness of this exquisite online community. This is a refuge from any scary place your mind might have taken you today. I hope you felt some taste of that sitting on your cushion was something spectacularly different, some sanity that perhaps you hadn't experienced today. And perhaps listening to this Dharma talk now, perhaps that can be a refuge for you from any exhausting grip your mind has been in today. So hearing the Buddha's teaching on wisdom and compassion is a welcome, safe place to spend time in after you've been wandering around in the wilderness of your own distressed mind, after any contraction that your body may have endured today. So the Buddha offered another great place to rest and to recover when we are weary, when we're lost in thoughts and anxieties, when we're overwhelmed, when we're numbed out. He taught that when we come into contact, when we're present and pay attention to the truth of our senses, what we can feel, we can touch, we can smell, hear, taste, and even contact with our own minds in a direct and non-conceptual way, he said, then you are safe again. When you can simply feel what's right here, you miss moment. When you can see what's right here in your room, the colors, the shapes, the objects, the smell, then you can unhook from the story about what's happening, and then you can take refuge in your own senses, in the direct truth of what's right here. When we unplug from the virtual world of all the dramas playing out on our screens and in our mind's anticipation of what might happen next, we just rest and relax in the very simplicity of what is actually happening, the truth right now, what is really happening right now in this moment of your life. You're sitting, you're in your room, your body's upright, you're hearing my voice, the body's breathing. That is the truth of the moment. And that is the crucible that can soften us, relax us, and open our tender, ragged hearts and minds. So when we anchor ourselves in our meditation practice to the simple truth of one breath, its texture, its sounds, the movement of the belly rising, the movement of the belly falling, the truth of that, then we can unhook from the scariness of roaming around without an anchor and rest and realize that right now, right this moment, you are safe. So just check that out for yourself right now. The truth of this moment is right now, I am relatively safe. Right now, this body is just breathing. Right now, I have just what I need. That I have enough. Feel that, receive that as the truth of the moment. So the refuge of mindfulness of breathing, coming home and resting in the breath, comes from awakening out of the scary wilderness of the fantasy of our thoughts. These thoughts that we simply hold to be true without examining them and noticing them. And then we come home and rest in the direct experience of what is more accurately occurring. And we need to awaken this way over and over again. I've been practicing this today. I feel my mind wandering off into really scary territory, into some virtual world of anticipation, what might happen next. And the practice invites me to come back. What's happening in my body? What can I feel? What can I see, smell, taste? So to awaken this way, you need to be really conscious. What is actually taking place right now? The chest is rising. The belly's falling. The breath's making a sound. The out-breath is long. You might have felt all of this or some of this in your sitting practice tonight. You might have noticed the in-breath was short, or the breath was extremely ragged or subtle. When you do that on your cushion, you can take that into your life. You really notice the nuance of things. When you see it this way with breathing, you become really aware of what we call body, of the depths of your physical experience. And this is really the truth of the moment versus the speculation of any imagined future. And there's a lot of talk at the moment, particularly about what is going to happen in the future. And that really is all speculation. And so I prefer to take refuge in what is actually here and now. That is where the mind can cool down, calm down, and settle down. You know, we breathe in the space of an hour. We've been together nearly an hour. We breathe about 900 breaths per hour, every hour of our life. And most of them go completely unnoticed. So perhaps tonight in your sitting practice, you notice some portion of those breaths, maybe 5, maybe 10, maybe you notice 20 of them. Yeah, that's great, because normally we don't notice any of the truth of breathing. So that's good news. And perhaps until we take up a meditation practice, we really don't start paying attention to the miracle of life that's just breathing this body. You don't have to do breathing. It just happens. It's just like when you turn the tap on and water just flows out of the tap. It's incredible. I think it's incredible. So mindfulness of breathing is learning to harmonize your attention with what is in this moment. It's a training to unhook from the virtual, exhausting landscape of your mind's fabrication and proliferation, of what should or might happen. You know, it's like a scary story, what might happen. And when you bring mindfulness to breathing, you come home and rest in the actuality of body sitting. And that's a really great relief. It's beautifully restful. I found that today when I invited myself to do that over and over again, to feel the poignancy of a breath. It's so restful. So in this training, we call anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing. You're training your mind also to be satisfied by something incredibly real and simple and honest and very subtle. And because it's so subtle, when you don't amplify or change your breath while you're sitting, you're training to become very sensitive to something incredibly subtle as natural breathing. If you can train the mind to really feel the body breathing in, the raw data of the body subtly expanding as the lungs fill up, you're really cultivating a great sensitivity of awareness. And perhaps then you might grow not to need really big wow experiences for your kicks. Perhaps then you become less dependent if you're able to be satisfied by something so simple as a breath. You become less dependent on more adrenaline-filled experiences, like listening to the news. Have you noticed, I listened to the news the other day. I was watching ABC News, and before it starts, there's a drum roll, like gathering up all this drama and intensity. I mean, there are very clever people making the music that heads up the news. You know, pay attention, Pay attention. It's so adrenalating, not even listening to the news, just listening to the music before the news. Yeah, I invite you to do that if you're interested. But when you become sensitive to just a breath, perhaps you become less dependent on adrenaline-filled experiences, because they can really drum up enormous internal hyper-awareness, hyper-alertness, hyper-vigilance and overstimulation. When you become attuned to the subtlety of a breath, you become less needy of drama, of gossip, of breaking news to make you feel alive. You don't need so many stimulants. You don't need so much coffee, so many drugs to switch you on, to feel alive. You're able to be more easily satisfied, to appreciate the rich fabric of just one breath at a time. And you might begin to really appreciate the fragile and limited time you have in this one short life. I wonder if you've ever sat with someone who was dying. It's an extraordinary experience right at the end of someone's life to sit with them, hovering gently over them and watching someone take their last few breaths. It's hypnotizing to sit with someone. I remember this experience myself, sitting with a loved one right at the end of their life, watching each breath, being truly present to each precious breath. The miracle of this fading body, breathing in, breathing out. So the appreciation of mindfulness of breathing in your meditation practice is really like sitting at the bedside of a loved one, the loved one being yourself, and being amazed at a single event, such as a single new breath, with wonder and awe. And then that allows you to get up from your cushion and notice and appreciate and sense the preciousness of more of life's subtle arisings and passings. Each full moon, each whistling kettle, the colour of your friend's eyes, the soft hum of your heater, appreciating each smile, each discreet purring of your cat, without everything slipping past you unnoticed. I'd like to read a beautiful poem by a very extraordinary poet called Ellen Bass. And this poem speaks to this preciousness of the detail of life that watching the breath can cultivate. And it's called Remodeling the Bathroom. If this were the last day of my life, I wouldn't complain about the shower curtain rod in the wrong place, even though it's drilled into the tiles. Nor would I fret over the watermarks on the apricot satin finish paint, half sick that I should have used semi-gloss. No, I'd stand in the doorway, watching sun glint off the chrome faucet, breathing in the silicon smell. I'd wonder at the plumber as he adjusted the hot and cold water knobs. I'd stare at the creases behind his ears and the grey flecks in his stubble. I'd have to hold myself back from touching him. Or maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I'd stroke his cheek and study his eyes, the amber of cellos, his rumpled brow, the tiny garnet threads of capillaries, his lips resting together, quiet as old friends. I'd gaze at him as though his were the first face I'd ever seen. So breath watching is a great training for a mind that is easily content and endlessly curious of the subtleties, that can sense the nuance of the rise and fall of the belly waving up and down. A quiet, steady mind that pays attention to breathing begins to see subtle differences and changes moment to moment. We sense no one breath is the same as the last. Each breath is unique, new, unreadable. And breath watching cultivates this enormous sensitivity to the changing cascade of the flow of internal and external phenomena. And the mind isn't so rocked around by that change. Taking refuge in the awareness of breathing, watching the changing, impermanent flow of breathing as a physical phenomena of incredible texture and shift, trains the mind to see and appreciate that everything that is constructed is also shifting, moving in a state of flux. Other people, relationships, roles, organizations, societies, resources, and even whole civilizations. And instead of knowing about change as an idea at a conceptual level of the intellect, you feel it as a deeply lived experience. This sustained contemplation of the transitory nature of breathing leads to great freeing shifts in the way we experience the reality of unpredictable change in all of our lives. When we rest in the breath and watch its changing nature moment by moment, we sense its fluid truth. We loosen our grip on the flow of all of life around us. We become attuned to change. We can allow life to flow and move in unpredictable ways with less resistance, with less fear. We begin to see that no experience is solid. There is no ground, and that is deeply okay. We can relax our grip and let go, let life flow through us and around us. That even this thing we call body is not solid. It's just a series of flowing sensations, of fleeting pulsations, of transitory tinglings. So much of our lives these past few months have been spent thinking, rehashing the past, what could have happened, what should have happened, or maybe you've been lost, like so many, in an illusory, imagined, and lately scary future. Mindfulness of breathing, coming home to rest in the refuge of breathing, roots us squarely in the present moment. It brings us into a clear relationship with the here and now, where you're safe, where you have enough, where we're mostly okay. We sense that we have what we need. This is the direct path to peace. And mindfulness of our body breathing, what the Buddha called the first foundation of mindfulness, this attention to the immediacy of what's actually unfolding in one moment, is where the Buddha said where we should reside, where we should abide. And we come to see and feel and sense that freedom is not found in some faraway place. It's not in the future. It's not even out of lockdown. It's not in an imagined better circumstance, but in your direct relationship with what's with you right now. The Buddha called all the other places we wander, all our stories, all our anticipations, our opinions, our comparisons, worries, our conditioned reactivity. He called them all foreign domains, where we're likely to be vulnerable to attack, where we're likely to be easily swept away by the stickiness of our mind's drama, where we cling and push away what's here, where we suffer. He called these places where we habitually hang out false refuges. So you might reflect on the habitual nature of comparing mind, of getting caught in doing and achieving, of lost in stories and complex plans about what might happen. And the Dharma teachings of the Buddha tell us these places might be compelling, but they're exhausting. They're places where we get lost, confused, where our heart aches. So the Buddha is encouraging us to wake up from these fantasies and mental fabrications and take refuge in our capacity to simply be with what's arising in our body, our minds, our feeling landscape. So the invitation is to take refuge not only one breath, but in the directness of sounds without stories about them, in the sweet ebb and flow of a song that might be playing, in the taste in your own mouth. He said, you are safest when you meet your moment-to-moment experience. And in this safe place of mindfulness, of breathing, this concentration practice, this soothing, restful coming back to the breathing, this is what we call calm abiding in insight practice. But it also creates great clarity of mind that allows for penetrating insight to see the truth of false ideas we slavishly live by, false ideas about why we suffer, false ideas about the permanence of things, and false notions of ourselves. When we can relax and feel one breath, its texture, its length, we can relax and see with this deep insight how our minds cling and resist. And in that sensitive seeing into the truth of what's arising, we can offer ourselves understanding and compassion. A mind that can rest on the direct truth of the feeling of a breath can then begin to inquire, what will really bring me happiness? The mind that can feel the nuance of the spaces between each breath is infinitely more curious about deeper and more potent questions. How do I want to live? How do I love? How is my mind interfering with the moment? How can I live freely? When we can sit steady, still, and interested in the direct experience of the flow of something as universal and moving as breathing, we come into clear, immediate contact with life itself. And this presence gives rise to a vast and welcoming receptivity to whatever arises in your inner and outer life, with natural openness and fearlessness. And perhaps you will come to notice that the breath just breathes itself. You can take a step back and notice and witness its movement, not as I am breathing in, not as my breath, but just another moving phenomena arising and passing. Nothing solid called breath, nothing belonging to you. This insight loosens the deep illusion of yourself as solid and fixed. The duality between breather and breathing, and you and breathing collapses, and there's just breathing happening all by itself. You are just being breathed. And it's such a relief to come home when the world is a scary, unpredictable place. So the invitation is to come home to the fabric of a single breath whenever you can. Rest and relax there. Pay attention to its sound, its movement. Be like a child stumbling upon something you have never seen or felt before. Sense its movement with wonder and delight. And when you rest in that practice, feeling, hearing, and sensing and allowing what is, you are safe and you are free. All right, let's just take a moment to rest in your direct experience, just a moment of mindfulness, of breathing body, of the simplicity and the directness of your experience. rest and take refuge there. May all beings everywhere be filled with understanding and awareness. May all beings everywhere be free. Thank you for your sweet, mindful awareness to yourself, to your lived experience, to each other, and for your attention for the talk. So deeply appreciative of the support here at MIM. And I'll hand back now to Katrina. Good night, everybody. I'll stay here for a few minutes so you don't have to rush off. And I think Katrina has something to tell us.